I'm going to show you how I transformed this patio from this to this as a beginner woodworker with very little knowledge and some pretty basic tools. Now the actual structural integrity of the patio was pretty good. Our game plan is to tear down all the walls and strip it back to the 4x4 posts and really open up the front deck so I can actually see my yard. Now the demo was a blast, just being able to rip down all this exterior siding, pull out all these old janky cracked up windows and plexiglass, and really see what we're working with. So that's what we're doing now, ripping off all the window trim and getting this thing down to the bare posts. Oh, damn it. Now here we're finally able to see what we're working with. We have two main structural 4x4 posts up against the house, and then we have another series of posts that were all used in the original construction, but they've been modified as this patio has been modified by the previous owner. This here is evidence of an old 4x4 post that runs all the way down to the concrete footing that somebody removed in order to create that little cutout that the old patio had. But what we're doing is we're knocking out that old piece, we're using a Simpson bracket, and we're going to cut a new 4x4 post to get that structural integrity back into that corner. Nice catch, Alec. Now due to the horizontal span of this patio, they had this secondary 4x4 header in up top to make up for more strength where that window opening was. We're taking that out because it's sort of impeding on my overall height. It came down to about 6 foot, but if I have any taller friends over, it might be a little uncomfortable to stand or step out on that side of the patio. So we're going to rip that out and we're going to put up a new 4x4 post in the center section there on the front in order to add some more stability from removing that header. Here we're installing another one of those Simpson brackets on the original cutoff 4x4 post there down on the floor so we can get a new 4x4 post up to really strengthen up that center section. Now there's an additional 2x4 running on the outside of these posts next to the house. The bottom was rotted out, so we just zipped it out with the Sawzall and I scabbed in another piece of 2x4 to make it whole again. Now the top end of this patio was not actually secured to the house, so we found some old L brackets that were used in the construction and we're running screws through that bracket into a stud that's behind the fascia to really tie this patio into the house and to make it feel a lot more strong and less wobbly. We were trying to stay budget friendly with this project. Originally we were going to leave the flooring, but after getting these walls out and posts exposed, I just had to tear up this plywood floor. It was starting to rot in some spots, it was painted a real ugly dark red, and I just had to invest some money into some proper decking after seeing the condition of it. Now the overall condition of the floor joists were pretty good. There was no rot. I lost a couple pieces of blocking with the plywood, but due to the direction of these floor joists running, I had to switch the direction of my decking. Originally I wanted to go parallel with the house, but we're going to need to switch things up to run perpendicular with the house so we can cross up on all those floor joists. I laid some blocking down underneath here all the way to the back, laid some extra blocking down here, repaired that one piece, so we're just going to leave those in. They're ugly, but it doesn't matter. It's going to make it a little bit stronger. Got all our posts trimmed down to level, and we just got back from the lumber yard with this beautiful cedar 2x6 decking, and we have our cedar 1x6 to wrap the posts. We're also going to be wrapping the header with these longer 10-foot boards. We're going to do that pressure treated header up there when we're done as well, and we have all of our lumber to wrap the posts. But we're doing a great job of reusing whatever lumber we have, taking any scrap 2x4s, putting them up. We also use some scrap wood for the fascia up there as well. Here I'm learning how to use a saber saw for the very first time. What we're doing is we're cutting out some notches where these decking boards would end up running into our 4x4 posts. That way we can retain the 7-foot length on all of our decking boards and everything will look really clean when we're done. You can see how well this board is now fitting in between those 4x4 posts after notching out some room for it. We had a couple other boards to notch out just for the other side and then maybe one more for the center post, and now we're getting all our boards laid out. And what I'm really trying to do is put an emphasis on the characteristics and the beauty of this wood. Stepping out of the front door, I want to see my favorite boards out of this entire stack of lumber. And we got really lucky by finding this 2x6 cedar. It is just absolutely beautiful, and it's really shown me and gotten me excited about the natural beauty of wood. Here I'm ripping down one of our 2x6 cedar decking boards to get it to fit. We only had to cut one to make it all work. And I'm also learning how to use the table saw. Shout out to my brother for letting me borrow it. And here we're using a belt sander just to throw a smooth edge on that 1 cut board before we get it all mounted in. And here my girlfriend is snapping us a chalk line so we can run down this edge with a skill saw, and so we can get clean, even lengths all the way across the decking. Now this is actually my first time using a skill saw properly too, following that line and making sure that I did not veer, because this is going to be a very exposed and very visible edge of the deck. After we got our decking cut to length, we finished with running in the rest of the hardware for the flooring. We used 3-inch outdoor deck screws. They are coated with a Torx head, and they ended up working great. We used 1.25 on any of the 1x6 cedar that we used as well. We probably put about 5 pounds of 3-inch exterior screws into this decking, but it is super strong, super stout, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Here my dad is taking a belt sander and putting what he called a bull nose on the edge of all these decking boards, just really getting a nice even uniform sand on them, and I am absolutely impressed with how flat this deck came out, especially being that we reused all those floor joists. Now here's where things got a little bit more technical. We're using this rough sawn cedar 1x6 to skin out the header and to skin out all the posts. I want them to look like big beautiful beams, but in reality they're just pressure treated 4x4 underneath. We set the table saw to a 45-degree miter, and we ended up mitering all those ends. That way when we put the bottoms and put the sides all up, we can match up those corners and make it look like a seamless beam from the outside. We ended up using a finishing nailer with 18 gauge nails to stick all the 1x6 cedar onto the posts. Now the header took a lot of time and finesse, so on all the other posts we didn't do any 45-degree miters on the joints. We ended up just butt joining them, and then what I ended up doing was using a wire wheel on a drill, and I ended up just running that along the seam, trying to blend in where those two boards end up matching. So I think with the wire wheel and also using some wood filler and some caulking, you can really make these beams look natural and beautiful and beefy. Now this is probably the most difficult part of the build for me, and this is why. On these sideboards you need to measure the overall width of the 4x4 posts. Another thing to factor in is we use those Simpson brackets to tie those 4x4s in to the existing 4x4s that run down to the footings that were originally cut off. So you need to pick one side to be longer than the others. For that I use the front and the back boards because I'm going to be seeing them from the driveway and from my front door. On the sideboards, I ran them a little bit shorter and let the front and the back overlap the sides. Now another thing to factor in is I would do at least 1/8 to 1/4 gap between all the boards and the posts. It doesn't need to truly be flushed up to all the 4x4 posts. There can be a void in there, so you have some wiggle room to move your skin around to get it nice, even, flush, and plumb wherever you want it to line up to. We got the last post skinned up, and I am just ecstatic with how well this deck and patio is turning out so far. Knocking down all those walls and getting all that natural sunlight in the afternoon has just made things look so much better, and here is a view of what it looks like so far.
Hi, puppy. Hello.
Oh, dog nails. Now I bought some of this golden oak wood filler to fill up any voids that we had on those posts that we skinned. It worked out pretty good. I used a wire brush and a wire wheel to buff off any excess that made it onto the cedar, but I'm going to end up retouching that after I get some poly on the deck. Here I'm just reinforcing a little critter hole that I found before we start working on the stairs. We're going to do stairs on both sides of this deck. Originally I was planning on 3 sides, but I don't want to impede any parking for my boat or any vehicles there in the front. So what we did is we dug out a trench and we took a pressure treated 4x4. I laid some pea gravel down in the bottom of the trench. My pops went and picked up some stringers, some pre-cut stringers from Home Depot, pressure treated, and then we were able to get some more cedar decking down onto these stairs. And the nice thing about it is with that top third step, we are expanding the overall width of this deck from 10 feet to 12 feet. Now we did have to do some troubleshooting on these store-bought pressure-treated stringers. With 2 2x6 cedar boards on top, we didn't have enough overhang on our tread. So what we did is we cut a little fir strip and added it in on our riser portion, and with that butting up against our decking, we were able to get about 3/4 of an inch of overhang on all of our treads, and we ended up making it work. We had to trim the stringers a little bit too. But overall, we worked through it. We threw some of those hangers up for the stair stringers, and we got to mocking up our treads and our risers. We're using the same 1x6 rough sawn that we used for the posts. We just flipped it to the smooth side, and we're using the same type of decking for all of our treads as well. Oh yeah. We cut our teeth on the stair design on the backside. That way if we made any mistakes it wouldn't be as visible, and we also used any not so choice boards over there as well and saved all the pretty ones for the front. Here I'm just digging up some old pieces that they used to reinforce the stairs, some old concrete, some old bricks, some old pressure treated, and we're going to do the same exact thing on this side. Dig down a trench, pack it tight, lay down some pea gravel for some good drainage for that 4x4 post, and then mount up the stringers and do the same. We tacked up the stringers loosely just with one nail. That way we could check every single stringer with the level, and if we needed to bring the stringers down to make them level at all, we still had good access to that pressure treated 4x4 in the ground. We could dig that out, remove some gravel, or try to smash it down a little bit more to get those stringers nice and level. So they all came out well. We ended up cleaning up for the day, and we hit it hard the next morning. We kicked off the next morning by getting some more boards notched out. There was another 4x4 post that was intersecting with the top step of our stairs, and we want that to look as uniform as possible. And with the way we did it, it does not even look like the top step of the stairs. It looks like a nice continuous long 12-foot deck. Once we got that all dialed in, we butted up these boards flush to the deck with a little block of wood, and we started running some more 3-inch exterior screws down in it and getting these stairs all buttoned up. Now you're going to run into some boards that have somewhat of a hook or a crown in them, so what my dad's doing is taking a 2x4 and really levering against that 2x6 cedar so I can get a nice straight line right before I run those screws in. But everything went really smooth, and we ended up using those 1.25 inch long screws for the cedar 1x6 risers, and again those big 3-inch decking screws for any of the 2x6 treads. Look at this deck, guys. It is now 12 feet wide, 7 feet deep. Got the headers all done, posts are skinned. This thing came out so good. I'm really happy with the stair design. The stringers look really clean. I'm really happy with that buried 4x4 post. Probably do a little bit of a flower bed right here to finish things out. We still need to sand all of these and then do a coat of satin polyurethane, but that's really gonna make this thing pop. And then of course I need to finish out fascia on both sides. We were able to reuse a board and do the fascia in the front. Get the chicken, Sage. Go get them. Still need to get all these dirt stains sanded out before we throw down the poly. Just tested out this DeWalt orbital sander dual action with 120 grit on this scrap piece of cedar. You can see the old finish to the new. Really brings out a lot of color. So now I'm gonna work on sanding this entire deck, keeping the dogs and the chickens off of it till I get a chance to get 1 to 2 coats of poly on this. Now another big shout out to my big brother Evan for letting me borrow this Orbital DA sander. It had some great Diablo sanding discs to go with it, the kind that are kind of honeycomb that allow the air to pass through, and we made quick work of it with that 120 grit. I was pretty bummed out with how dirty and how blemished the deck got just through the construction process. Dogs jumping on it, chickens jumping on it, dirty boots. But once I hit it with this sander, all the beauty of that cedar came right back out, and I was really excited to get some poly on it. I was afraid that we damaged a lot of these boards during the process, but look at the finish just come right back out. It just brings out this beautiful grain, and that's exactly what I want before I seal this, because I want to capture all the beauty of this cedar. Boy, screw metal, screw cars, woodworking is a blast. Had to flag out the yard with some old wildland tape, some old hazard tree tape for all you fire folks out there. Every single cedar board has been sanded, and the finish and the beauty has just come right back out. So Now it's time for poly. I'm gonna be using this bare satin polyurethane from Home Depot. And I got a brush kit from Harbor Freight. Got a nice quality brush here. I'm gonna pour a little bit in the tray. And I'm gonna start at the top with the header, do the post, work my way down. I'm gonna do a single coat on the post and the header. And then I'm gonna try to shoot for 2 coats on the deck. Now originally I started putting this polyurethane on with that brush that I showed you, but I ended up realizing that that foam roller that came with that tray worked a hell of a lot better. So I switched over to that and I ended up finishing all the posts, and I got, like I said, 1 single coat on all the posts and the headers, and then I moved over to the decking and I stuck with the foam roller for all the decking as well. It just simply held more polyurethane and things went a lot smoother. Now this stuff is dry enough to be walked on within an hour or two, but it's not fully cured until it's like day 5 or day 7. So I was careful to walk on it barefoot to get the 2nd and 3rd coat on it, but I'm not going to put any furniture or have any activity on it until I've given this thing at least a week to cure up. So I'm going to keep the flagging up to keep the dogs and the chickens out and really give this thing enough time to cure. I really want to protect my investment and keep this cedar looking beautiful. Now you might be thinking, Alec, you sure are throwing out a lot of construction and woodworking terms and using a lot of fancy tools for being a beginning woodworker. And you'd be right, but I actually just learned most of those words, and a lot of those tools I recently acquired or am borrowing from my brother and my dad. Now I'm very lucky to have some awesome parents. Thank you, Dad, and thank you, Leslie, for coming up and helping me with this project. The reason why they helped me is they gave me this happy birthday coupon for my birthday in April, and it's good for sweat equity and help on materials for a project. So last time I saw them, we got together, we put our heads together, and we figured that rebuilding this front patio would be a great way to increase the usability of my front yard and get a lot of bang for our buck while having a good time working on a project together. So I'm gonna get this fence down and we're gonna go over all the details on this build, and I'll show you the finished product. Here is the beautiful finished project. I still have a couple fine-tuned details to take care of. The fascia, running some caulking down on the seams, but let me show you what this cedar looks like with 3 coats of poly on it. It is just absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna backfill that trench with some pea gravel. We have our 2x6 decking for the treads, our rough sawn 1x6 for the risers, rough side on the back, and these boards just came out mint. Look at the color on that. And the finish, I am just absolutely in love. So a close look here at the posts. These rear posts against the house are 6 inches wide, 4 inches deep, and you can see I'm gonna come in and fill some of this with that caulking, whether it's the wood filler or we found some almond and cedar colored caulking, so we're going to give that a try. But the reason why I haven't done that yet is the caulking or wood filler should have a pretty easy time binding to the 1 coat of polyurethane I did on the posts, so I figured I'll let the poly cure and then I'll do the touch-ups later. But this wood just has such great characteristics. Here's a look at some of those joints that we cut out with that saber saw. There's going to be a little bit of spillover of polyurethane, but I can sand that down or scrape it with a razor blade at a later date, no big deal. Here's a look at the front. We did some creative little cap piece to tuck in there, but overall these beams just came out beautiful. My dad did some handiwork with cutting out some cedar end caps so we didn't have any exposed 4x4 posts, so he did a fantastic job of that as well. Here's a look at that miter joint, and then what we did is we took a screwdriver and we rubbed it along the edge like that, kind of folded both of those 45-degree miter joints back into it, and it cleaned up really good. Here's an example of some of the voids that I still need to fill in, but you know, from afar you can hardly tell, and it looks like a beautiful big beam. Again, my old man worked some magic on the end cap over here and did a great job of dressing up that 4x4 as well. So this one was mitered, and then this is an example of one of the butt joints that we used. This board was the wide one. I did a narrow one for the inside, and then you gotta account for the width of the 4x4 plus, you know, an 1/8 inch on each side, especially if you have any bracketry onto the 4x. And then I'd probably give yourself another 1/8 inch too, because like I said in the video, this can be fully floating. And then we just finished it out with some 18 gauge nails in my finishing nailer, which I just got from my dad this year. Here's a close-up on the end boards. I put 3 coats of poly, like I said, and I tried to really make sure I was soaking it into this end grain. And the bull nose looks great. The skill saw cut looks great. At a later date, I'll probably replace this material and maybe put in some cedar. And I'm still thinking about doing maybe a little flower bed down here at the base. But other than that, like, this thing is ready to rock. I sealed up any other holes. And in total, we spent just shy of $2,000, I think, on materials. Majority of that came from lumber. I think maybe another 150 for the stringers, the hanger brackets for the stringers as well, like 70 bucks for the gallon of poly. You know, it all adds up. This was really my first big woodworking project, and I learned so much. You know, my dad taught me how to miter on the table saw. I got to borrow my brother's table saw. I got to borrow that Orbital DA sander. My dad taught me how to skin out these posts like he's done it in the past. You know, he taught me how to lay out the decking, get any crowns out. It's also my first time ever using a belt sander, really. First time ever using a table saw, getting to borrow my brother's. My first time ever making mitered cuts on any types of boards like this. First time using a finishing nailer. It was a lot of firsts for me on this project, but my dad did a great job of teaching me, and I get to absorb a lot of that information by documenting in this video and passing it off to you guys, because I think one of the best ways to learn is to try to teach the material. And I sure did learn a lot on this project, but I had so much fun, and I am really, really in love with woodworking right now. And there's a lot of other woodworking projects that I want to get into after completing this. Some other improvements that were made to the property: I have proper vinyl blinds now. They picked those up for me at the Home Depot in Oregon. I don't have any big box hardware stores around here, so another big shout out to my dad and Leslie for helping me out with the windows. I also moved my greenhouse. I'm not sure if you remember, but it used to just be on dirt over here, and the weeds were growing up in it, and the gophers were getting into it, and the ground was uneven, and it was a pain in the ass to garden in there. Well, I took it from there and I brought it to over here. I ended up digging out the entire base for it, and then we laid down some really heavy duty weed mat. And then we put the greenhouse in place, and I filled it with a half a cubic yard of this awesome pea gravel. I mean, it is really deep, so it's a great improvement to the greenhouse. I'm really excited to garden in here this summer. I just got some seeds planted. I got my kiwis going. And yeah, I'm really pumped. This is a huge upgrade. Another big upgrade we did while my parents were in town was, I used to have a cinder block raspberry bed right here. You can kind of see the stain from it. Previous owners put it in. We got to tear that down, and we removed all of the cinder block. I got it pressure washed off. And my stepmom transplanted all of those raspberries into this garden bed. We transferred all the soil. Now these guys actually have a chance to take off because they're not feeding off of concrete anymore, and their tap roots can now get down into the soil. So all in all, we had an amazing trip together. We got so much done. We built this patio, we knocked out that planter bed, we put up new blinds, we barbecued, we played with the chickens, we played with the dogs. It was an amazing trip. So a big thank you to my dad and to Leslie for coming out, spending a week with me, and helping me really improve my property. It was an absolute joy to host you guys, and I am so happy with everything that we got done. I am so excited to spend my summers in the front yard now, and the dungeon is gone. I now have this beautiful cedar patio that is improving the quality of my life and improving the curb appeal of my house. So thank you for building with me, everybody. If you think I deserve it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps me with trying to be a full-time content creator. I hope you enjoyed, or I hope you learned something new. And as always, folks, I will see you on my next day off. Cheers. Cheers, Pops. Good job. Cheers. Thank you for all your hard work and help. I couldn't have done it without you. Good recap.